Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something today that might sound strange at first, but deep down, you already know it's true. There are moments in your life when somebody pops into your mind out of nowhere. You're not scrolling, you're not bored, you're not lonely. Boom, they just show up, and you try to shake it off, but the harder you try, the stronger it gets. That's not random. That's not imagination. That's energy. Somebody somewhere is calling you with their thoughts. People don't understand this, but thoughts are not quiet. They don't just sit inside your head and disappear. Thoughts carry weight, they carry emotion, and when emotion gets involved, it turns into energy. Now, energy don't need permission to travel. Energy don't care about distance, time zones, or silence. Energy moves where it's allowed to land. And when somebody thinks about you with real feeling, love, longing, regret, admiration, that thought leaves them and goes looking for you. See, weak thoughts stay trapped in the mind. Strong thoughts escape. That's the difference. Anybody can think about you once or twice and nothing happens. But when someone keeps thinking about you, replaying memories, wondering how you're doing, wishing they could talk to you, wishing they had done something different, that emotion charges the thought. And once it's charged, it becomes a message without words. That's when you start feeling things you can't explain. You ever just be minding your business and suddenly feel heavy for no reason? Or calm out of nowhere? Or you catch yourself smiling and don't even know why? That ain't random. That's emotional energy landing. Somebody sent something and you received it. You didn't hear a voice, but your spirit felt the knock. That's how it works when the connection was real. People think love only speaks through action, but love speaks through focus first. What someone focuses on grows. What they feel deeply gains power. And when their focus keeps returning to you, their energy follows. That's why sometimes you think of them right before they call. That's why their name pops into your head like it was placed there. It wasn't coincidence. It was alignment. Now let me tell you something important. This doesn't mean you have to do anything about it. Feeling someone's thoughts doesn't mean you owe them access. It just means the bond left an imprint. Some people don't miss you because they want you back. They miss you because you represented peace or safety or love at a time they didn't understand its value. And that realization shows up later in silence, in thoughts they can't control. Thoughts filled with emotion are like radio waves. You don't see them, but if you're tuned to the right frequency, you catch the signal. And when two people were once emotionally connected, that frequency stays familiar. That's why even after time passes, even after life moves on, the signal can still get through. So when you feel that pull, that sudden awareness, that quiet sense of someone reaching without reaching, don't call yourself crazy. You're not imagining it. You're just sensitive enough to feel what most people ignore. Emotional energy is real. Thoughts travel. And when someone thinks about you hard enough, long enough, with enough feeling behind it, part of that thought always finds its way home. A deep connection creates mental and emotional alignment. And once that alignment is formed, It doesn't just disappear because time passes or silence shows up. When two people truly connect, their minds don't just share moments, they share patterns. They start understanding each other without explanations, feeling shifts without announcements. That kind of alignment changes the way two people think, and once it's created, it lingers. Even when you're apart, the mind remembers the rhythm it once moved in with another soul. That's why some people enter your thoughts so naturally. You're not forcing it. You're not searching. Your mind is simply responding to a familiar emotional frequency. Just like a radio automatically locks onto a station it's tuned for, your heart recognizes what once felt right. When someone else is thinking about you at the same time, those emotional patterns line up, and that alignment creates awareness. You feel them without effort because at one point, effort wasn't required between you two. Now understand this, alignment doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean everything worked out. Sometimes the strongest mental connections come from unfinished stories, from words never said, from feelings never resolved. Those loose ends keep the mind engaged, and when one person revisits those memories with emotion, the other person often feels the echo, not because they want to, but because the bond once trained their minds to recognize each other. This is why you can feel someone thinking about you even when life has moved on. You might be doing better. You might be healed, but alignment isn't about pain, it's about familiarity. The mind remembers what once felt natural. And when someone is emotionally calling you through their thoughts, it's usually because they're trying to reconnect with a version of themselves they only felt when you were around. Let me tell you something else. Emotional alignment creates intuition. You just know. You can't explain it logically, but you trust it. You feel a pull, a pause, a moment where your heart gets quiet. That's intuition responding to alignment. People who have never shared real emotional depth won't experience this. Their connections end clean, but real bonds leave fingerprints on the mind, and this alignment doesn't require communication. Silence doesn't break it. Distance doesn't weaken it. Ego can hide it, but it can't erase it. Because once two minds have met emotionally, they don't forget how to recognize each other. That's why some people can go years without speaking, yet still sense when something shifts in the other person's life. So when you feel that sudden awareness of someone, that mental tap you didn't invite, don't ignore it. That's alignment reminding you that something real once existed. Not every connection fades quietly. Some stay alive in thought, in feeling, in intuition, waiting not to return, but to be acknowledged. Repeated thoughts are rarely accidental, and when someone keeps returning to your mind without effort, there's usually a deeper reason than nostalgia or habit. The mind is efficient. It doesn't waste energy replaying something that meant nothing. So when a person shows up in your thoughts again and again, especially during quiet moments, that's your inner awareness responding to something unresolved, something significant, something that left an emotional mark. People try to explain this away by saying it's just memory, but memory doesn't come with emotion unless it's activated. Random memories don't carry weight. Repeated thoughts do. They arrive with feeling, a pause, a shift in mood, sometimes even a physical response. And when those thoughts feel sudden, uninvited, and persistent, it's often because they didn't originate with you alone. There's a shared emotional thread pulling both ends at the same time. Think about it. How many people have passed through your life that you never think about anymore? Hundreds, maybe thousands. Yet this one person keeps finding their way back into your awareness. That's not coincidence stacking up. That's emotional relevance. The mind brings forward what still has meaning, and meaning grows stronger when it's being reinforced from both sides. When someone repeatedly thinks about you, especially with emotion, they're feeding that connection. They're revisiting moments, replaying conversations, questioning choices, wondering what you're doing now. Those thoughts don't just sit quietly inside them. They create momentum, and momentum looks for release. That's when it crosses over into intuition, when you start feeling them without knowing why. This is why repeated thoughts often come in waves. You'll feel fine for days, then suddenly they're everywhere. That's usually when the other person is deep in reflection. Maybe something in their life triggered the memory of you. Maybe they're missing what they lost. Maybe they finally understood your value. Whatever the reason, that emotional focus acts like a signal and your awareness picks it up. Now listen carefully. This doesn't mean the universe is telling you to act. It's not a command, it's information. Awareness, not instruction. Sometimes repeated thoughts show up simply to confirm that the connection was real, that it mattered, that it changed you. Not every emotional echo is meant to restart the story. Some are just reminders of who you were when you loved deeply or were truly seen. People who've never formed deep connections don't experience this. Their thoughts move uneasily. But when two people once shared emotional depth, their minds learned each other. And learning doesn't disappear. It stays dormant until something activates it again. So when a person keeps appearing in your thoughts without invitation, don't fight it and don't romanticize it. Recognize it for what it is, a sign that what you shared wasn't ordinary. Repeated thoughts are rarely accidental. They're emotional echoes traveling back and forth, reminding both people that some connections don't end when the conversation does. Intuition is the language of unspoken communication, and most people ignore it because it doesn't shout, it whispers. It doesn't come with proof, logic, or explanation. It comes as a feeling that says, pay attention. When someone is thinking about you deeply, consistently, and emotionally, intuition is how that message reaches you. Not through words, but through awareness. You feel it before you understand it. Intuition doesn't come from the mind alone. It comes from emotional memory, from shared experiences, from moments when two people understood each other without needing to explain. That's why intuition only works when a real connection existed. You can't intuit someone who never mattered. There has to be history. There has to be emotional exchange. Once that exchange happens, intuition becomes the bridge that remains even when communication ends. People often doubt intuition because it doesn't make sense. But intuition was never meant to be logical. Logic comes after feeling, not before. When you suddenly sense someone thinking about you, it usually comes with a pause in your mind, a stillness, a subtle shift. You might feel drawn to check your phone, or you might just sit there thinking of them without knowing why. That's intuition translating emotion into awareness. The reason intuition is so accurate in emotional connections is because it's built on pattern recognition. Your heart remembers how that person felt, how they entered your life, how their presence changed your emotional state. When they think about you again, especially with intensity, your intuition recognizes the familiar pattern. It's not guessing, it's remembering. Now, here's what most people get wrong. They think intuition is always about action. That if you feel something, you must do something. That's not true. Intuition is information, not instruction. Sometimes it's simply letting you know that someone somewhere is emotionally reaching out without the courage to speak. It's awareness, not obligation. Intuition also becomes stronger in silence. When there's no noise, no distraction, no constant talking, you become more sensitive to emotional signals. That's why these feelings often come late at night, early in the morning, or during moments of calm. Silence creates space for intuition to speak. And let me tell you this, intuition never forces itself. If you ignore it, it fades. If you respect it, it sharpens. That's why some people are highly intuitive in relationships while others miss every sign. It's not about intelligence. It's about emotional openness. So when you feel that unspoken pull, that quiet sense that someone is reaching you without words, don't dismiss it as imagination. You're not making it up. You're tuning it in. Intuition is the language of unspoken communication. And when two people once shared emotional truth, that language never completely disappears. Love often speaks before the mouth ever does, and most people don't realize this because they're waiting for words instead of listening to feeling. Before someone ever calls, texts, or shows up, love has already started the conversation. It starts in the mind. It starts in the heart. And when that love is real, it doesn't stay silent just because the person does. It finds another way to speak. When someone is in love with you or realizes they were, their thoughts become crowded with you. Not because they choose it, but because love redirects focus. You become the reference point. Every quiet moment circles back to you. Every emotional pause brings your name forward. And those thoughts, filled with emotion, don't just stay trapped inside them. Love gives them momentum. That's why sometimes you feel someone before they ever reach out. You sense a warmth, a pull, a familiarity that suddenly returns. That's love knocking without hands, speaking without sound. It's not dramatic, it's subtle, but it's persistent. Love doesn't need permission to be felt. It just needs space. People think silence means absence, but silence is often where love gets loudest. When someone can't express what they feel, when pride, fear, or timing blocks their words, love turns inward. And what turns inward grows stronger. That's when thoughts intensify. That's when emotions concentrate. And concentrated emotion doesn't stay contained, it travels. This is why love doesn't always disappear when relationships end. Feelings don't follow rules. They don't shut off on command. Love lingers, it waits, it watches, and sometimes it reaches back through memory and thought, hoping to be felt again, not to disturb your life, but to remind itself that it was real. Love also has a way of showing up when you're calm, not when you're chasing. When your heart is quiet, you become more receptive. That's when love signals get through. You feel someone thinking about you because love recognizes love. It responds naturally without effort. And here's something important. Love doesn't always want reunion. Sometimes love just wants acknowledgement. It wants to know it mattered, that the time, the emotion, the connection wasn't wasted. When someone thinks about you with love, they're often seeking emotional closure, not contact. They're speaking to you in the only way they can. So when you feel that gentle pull, that unspoken presence, don't rush to define it. Don't panic. Don't romanticize it either. Just understand this. Love speaks long before the mouth ever does. And when it does, it chooses the heart as its first language. Awareness is the difference between coincidence and confirmation, because most people experience signs but never recognize them. Things happen around them, feelings rise inside them, patterns repeat in front of them, and they brush it off as random. But awareness slows you down just enough to notice that randomness has rhythm. And when something keeps showing up with rhythm, it's no longer accidental. You see, coincidence happens once, maybe twice, but when the same feeling, the same person, the same thought keeps appearing at unexpected moments, awareness starts asking questions. Why now? Why again? Why this person and not the hundreds of others from your past? Awareness doesn't jump to fantasy, it observes. It connects dots quietly, and once those dots connect, what used to feel like chance starts to feel intentional. Most people miss this because they live distracted. Noise everywhere. Phones buzzing. Minds racing. When you're not aware, you override intuition with logic. You tell yourself it's nothing, even when your body reacts, even when your mood shifts, even when your heart pauses. Awareness says, hold on, something just happened. It doesn't rush, it listens. When someone is thinking about you deeply, that energy often shows up alongside small signs. You think of them and see their name. You remember them and hear a song tied to them. You feel them and check the time, same hour again and again. Individually, those moments seem meaningless. Awareness stacks them, and once stacked, they stop looking like coincidence. Awareness also sharpens your emotional sensitivity. You start noticing how thoughts arrive. Some thoughts feel light and passing. Others arrive heavy, warm, emotional. Those are the ones awareness pays attention to, because not all thoughts are yours. Some are responses, some are echoes, and awareness is how you tell the difference. Here's the truth. Confirmation doesn't come as proof. It comes as clarity, a quiet knowing that doesn't need explanation. When you're aware, you stop fighting the feeling and start understanding it. You realize this isn't imagination. This is connection. And once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. Awareness doesn't mean you chase meaning. It means you stop dismissing experience. It means you respect what your inner world is telling you. When the same emotional signal keeps returning, awareness says, this matters, not because it demands action, but because it